Hi, I'm Sandy Ray, founder of Sandra E. Ray CPA, where we alleviate financial headaches so that you can create a bigger impact. Today, we're going to be talking about those documents that are essential to running your new nonprofit organization. Now, whether you have a new organization or a growing organization, you have a lot on your plate. So I want to run down a few of the essential documents that you will need for your nonprofit organization. Now, telling you this is not an all-inclusive list. There are so many different state requirements that makes it almost impossible to do. And in the time frame that we have today, especially impossible. So I'm going to go over a list, and if the items that you may need, hopefully it will trigger your memory so that you can get access to those documents. So let's start with your organizational documents. And by those, I'm talking about when you're starting up your entity that is going to become your nonprofit organization. Most likely, you're going to have articles of incorporation and bylaws. Obviously, you're going to want to keep those. Your bylaws, as John said last week when we interviewed him, he recommends that every board member have a copy of the bylaws on hand so that you can reference them whenever you need to when making decisions or knowing what's appropriate or required for the corporation. A couple more documents will be that you want to keep is your Form 1023, your tax exempt application, and your resulting IRS determination letter saying that you are in fact a nonprofit organization. Now, these two documents are part of your public disclosure requirements. Now, what I mean by that is, as a nonprofit organization, you are required to provide information to the public upon their request. So I recommend that you have a separate folder for your public disclosure documents. And your Form 1023 application and your IRS determination letter are part of that. I would also recommend that you keep a duplicate copy in your permanent file record. Other organizational documents revolve around state requirements. You have to have a business license. You have to file with your Secretary of State, those types of things. You're going to want to keep those documents as well. Now, any board and committee meeting minutes, obviously, we are keeping those in our permanent file. We have to have those to reference to for documenting decisions that are made by the board, and they're very handy to go back and do some research from time to time. And then finally, in the organizing documents, I put trademarks and patents. If you have any trademarks and patents, you're going to want to be keeping those and then doing the renewals as needed. The next section of documents I want to talk to you about, I call compliance documents. Now, obviously, we talk about charitable solicitation filings all the time. You may have many of these in multiple states. The next thing I want to talk about is sales tax. You know, as you're purchasing items as a nonprofit organization, many states exempt you from sales or use tax on items that you purchase or use in your organization. So you want to have that application and letter stating that you're exempt. And you also may need a form to give to vendors when you're making purchases to let them know that you're exempt from sales tax. So it's something you're going to want to keep very handy. The other side of sales tax is retail sales tax. Now, if you're selling anything on your website or through a store, you may be subject to retail sales, and you will have to register in your state and maybe other states where you're selling items if you're selling on an online store. So you need to do that research for each state that you're selling in as far as what the requirements are for collecting and remitting sales tax, and you need to have your sales tax certificate. The next section of documents I want to talk about is retirement plans. Retirement plans come with many requirements, employee notifications, maybe every 3 years you have to update your summary plan description, those kinds of things. And then they also have an annual filing of a 5,500 if you're not a simple plan. So those are the kinds of documents you're going to want to keep with relationship to your retirement plans. And then finally, of course, we have our Form 990 and related state filings that go along with that. Now, your Form 990 is another one of those public disclosure documents. So you're going to want to keep a copy in your permanent file and your public disclosure file. Your public disclosure file actually is slightly different than your permanent file copy. And when I say that, when we look at Schedule B, if you're required to do a Schedule B, you are not going to include the detailed information regarding the donor specifically. You're just going to include the amounts. So that's a little hint for you. The next section of documents I want to talk about are risk management. And obviously, we're going to be keeping our insurance policies, but also any claims records. If you have any records related to claims, you're going to want to keep those for several years after the claim is closed. Of course, we have our policies and procedures manuals for the entire organization that includes our accounting internal controls, our ethical and conflict of interest policies. I recommend you have a cybersecurity and data protection policy that discusses not only protecting your data, but your backup procedures. And then your document storage, you need to consider how, especially electronic document storage, changes over the years, and you're going to need to plan to keep up with that. And then finally, under risk management, I want to talk about HIPAA regulations. If you are keeping any type of medical information on your constituents, then you are subject to HIPAA regulations, and you're going to want to research what those requirements are, and you're going to want to keep those documents and make sure that you're keeping that medical information secure. The next section of documents I want to talk about is human resources and payroll. Obviously, we have our employee manual. We have employee files that include things like the hire letter, the job application, reviews, employment benefit applications for health insurance and that kind of thing, or waivers, all those things that go into the employee's file. We're going to want to keep that for at least 7 years after the employee left the organization. The next group of employee and payroll documentation I want to talk about is employee benefit plans and the documents related to that. Now, we've kind of talked about retirement a little bit, but this also includes our health insurance, our life insurance, disability. It could be maybe you have an HSA or an FSA. It could be, do you have a tuition assistance program? Do you help with child care, that kind of thing? Do you provide free parking in a major city where the organization is paying for it? So those are the kinds of things that you want to keep track of in your benefit plan documents for your employees. And then finally, obviously, the I-9s. We need to make sure that we're keeping those I-9s and we're keeping that file for our employees as well. And then the last group of documents I want to talk about, of course, for me, is going to be the accounting documents. Now, this is going to be our annual reports. We've already talked about the 990 and keeping that. We have our financial procedures and policies. I want to talk about securing our passwords. And maybe this should have gone under risk management, but you need to make sure that all your passwords are in a secure document and that people only have access to the passwords that they're supposed to have access to. Also under accounting is our contracts and our agreements and our accounting records and support documentation. Now, all of these may be subject to our records retention policy, depending upon your organization and how long you want to keep things. You may end up purging those at some point in time. We do have a sample records retention policy that was developed by the AICPA. If you would like a copy of that, please let us know and we can help you. But really, most of these documents that we've talked about today need to be kept permanently. So depending on your size, your complexity, and even your location, these things may affect what documents you need to keep for your organization. I recommend that you keep them centrally located. It's very easy for one person to say, okay, I'll keep these in my garage or wherever when you're first getting started, But as you grow or several years later, people don't remember where those documents are. So maybe you have two sets of documents. You have a duplicate copy for many reasons. But keep them centrally located, maybe in multiple locations, so they don't get lost or destroyed. And believe me, when you want one of these documents, you want it right now. You're in the middle of something and somebody wants it attached to a grant application or something else that you're doing that you just need a copy of your IRS determination letter. And let's set some security on these documents, whether they're in a locked file-proof cabinet or the access is electronic. We want to make sure that these documents are protected, that only the people that we want to have protected have access to, or both our team members and outside people who may try to use them in an unethical manner. I want to thank you for joining us today, and remember that creating a bigger impact starts with stopping the nonsense. If you're dealing with nonsense in your nonprofit organization, we'd love to help you cut through the noise.